Right.
Sorry, brief technical issues. Now over.
We were talking about the fascinating issue.
So it's interesting that happened at precisely 3 hours in. So I suspect that's the limit of the technology we're using to share screens. Is it's just like, you've hit 3 hours, fuck you, restart the connection. But there we go.
We were fascinating.
Yeah. A lot of this has got a lot of the Prime thing has got shit for being like, oh, there's black people in Lord of the Rings. What is it? And especially people.
The wrong sort
playing
of people.
to the realism of dwarves, being like, dwarves live underground, so they'd be pale, if anything, they wouldn't be black. And it's like, oh really? Where are you going to apply the rules of realism to Tolkien stuff? Where are you going to stand on, literally at some point in this series, you're going to see a man pour his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life into a fucking ring, and you're concerned about realism?
Yeah, I think you could cut this two ways. You can take the literal interpretation. The only race that are described as black are the orcs, and even for 50 years that's been problematic. We've spoken earlier in the series about how even in 1964 they highlighted, so the orcs are described as black and ape-like, and obviously that's problematic and shitty. Or you can accept...
And yeah, remind me that Tolkien essentially just kind of dodged the question, didn't he?
He did. Or you can accept that Tolkien conceived a multicultural, multi-ethnic world from the get-go and say that, why the hell shouldn't there be black people or Asian people or, any other kind of people in this work of epic fantasy?
Yeah.
I think a necessary and bold casting decision. I respect it.
I think I'm definitely on the side of, frankly, if Tolkien didn't go to pains to say they're not black, fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Basically. Unless Tolkien was like, this proud white man, which he doesn't do, really, at all. Maybe once or twice, but...
It's interesting that you get that, you mentioned this, because, some of the earliest descriptions we get of Aragorn, explicitly describe him as dark-faced. He's swarthy skinned. As in,
yes, swarthy is an odd one.
Well, swarthy is my word, but dark-faced is Tolkien's.
Yeah, but
word.
that kind of description it comes up a lot. So, do you know where the word swarthy comes from?
No, please tell me.
It comes from the Dutch schwarz, which means black.
Okay.
And is often kind of interpreted as in a lot of things as meaning, that kind of weather-beaten, darker skinned, which is basically a white man that's been standing on the ship of the deck of a ship for too long, and has become dark skinned.
I know that
but a lot of stuff of Tolkien's era will talk about stuff being swarthy, and what they actually mean is black, as in actually black skinned African men.
Yeah, I mean I don't see, given everything
there's a lot of
else
room to interpret that based on how racist you are. So,
yeah. I think there is an argument to be made, could you interpret the King of Gondor as a black man? There's no hell reason not to, because none of this matters. These are fictional people in a fictional world. Is that how Tolkien intended? Maybe, maybe not. We'll never know.
So we've seen. So I mentioned earlier about how there's oh shit. Oh bollocks! Oh, no.
Can we become invisible?
No, but I think I've climbed away in time.
Okay.
So
anyway,
detected. But yeah, there's. As I say, they're not allowed to contradict Tolkien, but they can add shit and whatever. So there's a fair few characters in this where they've overtly said at this point, this is a character we've made up for this. So they're doing a Beren and Luthien style character that there is. There's an elf and a man and that are, or a human that are in love. That's fine. But the human of that pair is played by a Hispanic woman. Everyone's like, there weren't Hispanics in Lord of the Rings. It's there weren't these fucking characters in Lord of the Rings even. So
I know that a popular way to describe Spaniards was swarthy skinned. Still to this day.
You see it people Spaniards, and especially people of Latin heritage, South American heritage, are definitely physically darker skinned than a European.
Yeah, as someone who has just been to Madrid, yes. And also, they look beautiful.
I mean, look at a Greek or something like that. It's compared to, the Northern Europeans that people always assume Tolkien's talking about, which are basically about as white as you can get without being technically anemic.
Yeah, and, why... Honestly, why the hell not? Tolkien was writing a tradition, he's talking about an old empire. Numenor is an old fallen empire. Why can't it be Greco-Roman? Why the hell not? Why can't it be old Spanish? These are all old fallen empires that were old fallen empires and Tolkien was writing this. And like we
Yeah,
have,
so
we
definitely
have, we have
there's-
the explicit descriptions of like the future king of Gondor as being dark faced or like with a
Yeah.
dark look. Open to interpretation, but like there is grounds within the text that Tolkien himself wrote, and we know that he endorsed like multi-ethnic, multicultural societies. I say, fucking go for it.
I mean, yeah, this is the man who, granted, has the problems with orcs, but again,
Yeah,
I think part of that does fall under the thing we talked about with J.K. Rowling of perhaps the problem isn't here that Tolkien is racist so much as that, interpretations of orcs and goblins in Western literature is racist.
yes.
But then on top of that, this is the man who, when asked, "You're not Jewish, are you?" by the Nazis, says, "I fucking wish." Like, he was, again, he didn't mince words there. Oh,
No.
Christ,
I'm really
bad it
glad that even within the course of this recording, I've discovered that like Tolkien was unequivocally not a white supremacist. That makes me view
and
his work
he's
completely
such
differently.
an easy and obvious target for white supremacists to claim.
Oh, yeah.
And I strongly get the impression he knew that. Like, he realised... Because, Tolkien, as we say, huge Wagner fan, can't have not been aware of the problematic aspects of Wagner and how that directly fed into Nazi stuff.
Oh, yeah,
Like, he cannot not have been aware that basically how his, in a lot of ways, hero, Richard Wagner, was an anti-Semite, and how the Nazis were like, yeah, this guy's the fucking shit. Like,
Well, like,
and
that-
I feel like, if anything, he's going out of his way to distance himself from that because of his kind of his realizing of how easily one can be, like, obviously I'm not saying that Wagner isn't problematic, but certainly the Nazis were like, yes, this man is good, and how Tolkien must have seen, they saw Tolkien and were like, yes, this is a good, strong Norseman, and how he wanted to clearly distance himself from that.
This is very complicated, but also very relevant. So Tolkien has just gotten momentum writing Lord of the Rings in 1939. So by 1939, we're at Balin's tomb. Okay, that's as far as the narrative has progressed. And by 39, it's apparent to the Western world what is going on in Nazi Germany. And in 38, they've contacted him explicitly, asking if he's Jewish and asking him what's going on with his particular style of storytelling. So he was absolutely not ignorant of this, as much as he was.
I mean, it's hard to be ignorant when you personally are on the Nazis' radar. Partly because he's got, a good, strong German name, Tolkien.
Yep. But this is where it must have been explicit to him. As much as we criticize him for his maybe cultural insensitivity of his time, Tolkien was not a stupid man. But by no means was he an unintelligent individual. He was a professor at Oxford, a supremely intelligent individual. And as much as obviously there was a certain amount of racial insensitivity that would have infected him by virtue of the fact that he grew up in the 19th century.
Yeah, I guess. I always find that really difficult. Right. Do you have this as well? I find the 19th to 20th century to be a huge divide for, thinking about when people are from. It's knowing that, people like Hitler, like Churchill and stuff like that, were born in the 1800s seems like a huge gap. And I guess this is kind of like what we were talking about earlier, that, this was a massive, time where everything changed, but it's it's the equivalent of someone today being born in the 50s. It feels like knowing that these are major people who were around in our grandparents' time, but who were born in the Victorian era. Suddenly seems like that's a huge gulf of time that you're describing.
I've heard it explained in terms of energy sources. So within the period of about maybe 80, 90 years, we went from coal power to gas power to electric power.
Yeah.
There were 3 different energy sources within the space of one human lifetime, and that's wild.
I mean, yeah, when we were talking about how different combat
before.
changes, you can see why that affects you so much. Yeah,
that had never happened before in human history. How we switched energy sources 3 times in one human lifetime.
It's funny, so I had this conversation with my dad recently about how much do you feel? Oh shit, that's not what I meant to do. How much do you feel the world has changed in your lifetime? And he was like, yeah, the internet is a big thing. And he doesn't want to deny that, but my dad was very clear on he doesn't think that's as significant as as you say, like the changes in, the way wars are fought or the way energy works in his father's generation.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we're right on the edge of we're the awkward thing of we're old enough to have, experienced bad internet and dial-up and stuff like that, but generally, social media's has changed stuff a bit. I don't think it's changed stuff as much as you say, the fact that you can grow up with your city has 1 or 2 oil lamps to every house has electric lighting in your lifetime. That's wild.
In this 1964 interview that I speak about with Tolkien, the interviewer asks him, do you feel like Lord of the Rings is representative of the decline of the 20th century? So the interviewer obviously knows his Tolkien. I can't give this guy, I don't know his name, I wish I did. But I'm sure if you link the video, Sprite or whoever's editing this, link the video. This interviewer really knows his shit, and he quizzes Tolkien on do you think your third age of Middle Earth is analogous to the 20th century, where everything is in decline? We're all on a downward spiral, despite technological advance, etc., etc. And Tolkien dodges the question, but he dodges it in a really interesting way, where he says that in my lifetime, I got to he's over 70 when the interview's taking place, and he's like, well, all I can really say is there's been great change, unprecedented change, change that has been quicker than anything else in human history. So even a man who wrote a setting that was the most developed setting in human literary history, no one has ever developed a setting more detailed than this, which is technologically stagnant. But even within his lifetime, he recognized that, this is moving so quickly that even I, as a very intelligent professor at Oxford University, I'm not prepared to give an interview answer where I definitively answer this question, which I think is telling.
Yeah, it's interesting that he brings up the problem of the technological. But we talked about this very early on tonight. But the technological stagnation of Middle Earth is very interesting. It's these guys, go 4,000 years and they never develop, the semiconductor or the microchip or anything like that. Is weird to us now. Probably wasn't that weird to someone who was first conceptualizing this stuff in the 20s.
Well, Tolkien actually did. He does talk about it in the same interview. He does talk about this. The journalist says to him, you take great pains to point out that Middle Earth is a version of our world, and Tolkien is no, I never meant it that way. So it's more like science fiction where it's a possible version, or there are related factors with our world, but it's not meant to be taken literally that this is planet Earth. It's more a remembered history, which is a much more esoteric and weird example. But I think he didn't want people to think that Middle Earth would evolve into modern Europe, for example.
Yeah, I think he's.
You are failing this a bunch. Should we maybe just abandon this?
No, because we need to do it. But right, the issue is I'm focusing too much on the side objective, which is stealth kill 5 Uruks, where actually I should just be focusing on poisoning the grog barrels.
Maybe try that, Dr. Deer.
I mean, on we go, because this conversation is very interesting, but...
Well, we feel viewership, I'm just going to let this out right now, we feel we have a really good, and this is different from our Lord of the Rings chat that we had in the... Let me get this right. The Lego Lord of the Rings videos that we posted. And you should go back and watch those, because we talk a lot of Lord of the Rings, and I think there's some really brilliant conversations. Some of the best conversations about Lord of the Rings I've ever had, as someone who has loved this since, I was born, basically.
Yeah.
So go back and watch those if you haven't already. But, let us know how you're enjoying this so far. This is just a staging piece with more elaborate set dressing, as far as I'm concerned, to discuss Lord of the Rings.
And, doesn't have to struggle with your technical difficulties with connecting controllers and lag and all of that. You basically just get to sit back, have some bevs, and talk about Tolkien. I have to play the fucking game. And I've been having bevs, and here we... That's where the problem comes in.
Well, yes, that is true, but by the same token, I did more research than you, so fuck you.
Hugely so. Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Can you look up, by the way, who voices Talion?
I have already. It's Troy Barker.
I thought it was Troy Baker. Yep.
Troy Baker, my apologies.
Yep.
So the guy who's the video game voice person
of every protagonist in every fucking game ever, yeah.
Everything. He's very, very prolific. Go look him up, viewership. I guarantee, if you've watched even 5 Infamous Gentleman videos. Probably he's in like all of
Literally,
them.
I didn't know for sure, but my head was like, this is going to be either Troy Baker or Nolan North. It's going to be one of them, because it always is. With like AAA titles like this are voiced by one of those two men, basically.
Which is a nice overlap, because most of the voice actors in Critical Role, the Dungeons & Dragons series, which is massively popular, which is almost a direct inspiration for our own Infamous Gentleman Dungeons & Dragons series, which, by the way, viewership, scroll back, go and check our channel, watch it, it's great, please do. All of that good stuff, like, was almost directly inspired, would not be possible without Critical Role. And Liam O'Brien, one of the critical cast members from that series, is the voice of Gollum in this game, as we talked about earlier on.
The stink of this. I'm surprised they can keep it down.
What are you poisoning this with, by the way?
I'm poisoning the Orcish grog.
With what, exactly?
The poison. I've been gathering I've been gathering poison herbs for quite some time in the missions prior to this one.
I did see that. Like, so we were talking about drugs earlier in Lord of the Rings. Is this a good time to talk about drugs in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, go for your drugs talk here. Yeah, why not?
So, I don't know if you're aware of this viewership. Like, it's a weird subset of Lord of the Rings, but I have this in my notes for this series because I assumed this would come up. There's a shit ton, an unbelievable, an unprecedented, and a surprising amount of drugs in Lord of the Rings.
Your love of the halfling's leaf has clearly slowed your mind.
Let's begin with that. So, your love of the halfling's leaf. So clearly, like, the hobbits are smoking
This is
something.
weed. This is overtly weed.
Yeah, like overtly. Like, I don't know. I've done a bunch of research about Tolkien's personal life. I don't know his relationship with like narcotics. I just don't. But like, I do know like that line is very explicit in Fellowship, and like clearly the halflings are smoking something. It's not tobacco. And again, Tolkien grew up in the 1800s. It may have been that there was there was stronger stuff available over the counter than what we can get today, unless you're in California, in which case...
But still, yeah, the phrase pipe weed is deliberate.
Telling. So,
Surely?
like, right off the bat, like, the weakest, at least conceptually...
There we go, this is much easier, it turns out, when I'm not trying to do the bonus objective of stealth killing Uruks.
Good. In any case, like, the weakest, as in the physically frailest people in Middle-earth... Here we go! Oh, look at the effects of the pipe weed in this bastard.
Oh, God. We're the goodies.
Oh, is this his wife? Did his wife survive?
No, this is your man who we've been working with, Hiragon. It's his wife.
Oh, side squeeze. We'll come back to the notion of like sex and sexuality in Lord of the Rings in a moment. Once we're past the drug stuff. but this cutscene is compelling. Well, this is nice. We okay. So
also, I don't know if you've ever seen Troy Baker as the guy who voices Talion in person. Well, not in person, but in any stuff. He's a giant.
Is he really?
He's 6'5". He is colossal.
Wow. I know that in modern times, like very often, like voice actors do the motion capture for their equivalent.
I think this was just before that era.
That's a shame.
Because yeah, like, I've been playing like recently, like Assassin's Creed. What the fuck is it? Not Origins, Odyssey, the one that's set in Greece, and it's like it's clear that the major actors have done at least face capture for their lines, that they've worn spots on their face while doing it because the actions of jaw and mouth are really well meshed to the dialogue lines. Right, unfortunately, the game is now telling me I have no main quest options other than to try and take down Mog the Rock Johnson.
I don't think you're ready to face Mog the Rock Johnson.
No.
Hey, viewership, the Doctor is gone, but I am still here. If you want to hear more about the drugs of Lord of the Rings, tell us in the comments, because it is a fascinating and wild story that actually intersects really nicely with the kind of unfortunately weird Nazi military regime that we were talking about earlier in the show. So this is me, the Bard, like taking control of Doctor Stream. Tell us what you want in the comments. If you want like weird Nazi Lord of the Rings style drug commentary, which is a weird thing to want, but it's fascinating, I assure you. Tell us in the comments right now if there's something else you want from this series, because like we're probably going to do this over 2 installments, and we'll take one installment's comments on to the next installment. So tell us what you're enjoying in the comments. We actually really do appreciate it. We do take it on board. We try to engage with you whenever we goddamn can. We love you very much, viewership, but I will now wait for the Doctor to return. But in the comments, tell us what you're enjoying. Is it the commentary? Is it the gameplay? Is it our Lord of the Rings chat? You tell us. But Regardless what else you think, we love you. You guys are the best, and we hope to bring you more of this content soon. See you in a bit.